The scene opens with the protagonist in their office. Papers and contracts neatly stacked, reflecting the hard work and dedication they've poured into their career over the past 15 years. Flashbacks show a younger version of the protagonist in the early days: cold calls, meetings with hesitant clients, and sleepless nights spent strategizing. The protagonist's progression is marked by moments of triumph, landing their first big deal, receiving recognition from management, and witnessing their team grow and flourish. Through the years, they've consistently exceeded sales targets, built strong, trusting relationships with clients, and earned a reputation as a reliable leader within the company. There are also glimpses of leadership moments, mentoring new employees, leading sales training, and motivating their team during tough times. As the camera pans across the office, it captures the satisfaction in the protagonist's face as they reflect on their journey. Their corner office, the photographs on the wall of successful campaigns, and the accolades they've accumulated all speak to their success. The protagonist is shown mentoring a younger colleague, offering guidance and sharing wisdom earned through years of experience. The image of the protagonist as a leader is clear. Their reputation is solid, and their confidence is undeniable. Their career has been a steady rise, and it's clear they've earned their place. For years, the protagonist has worked tirelessly, and every achievement has brought them closer to a position of leadership within the company. However, the serenity of this moment is soon broken. The protagonist walks down the hallway, and a brief conversation with a colleague catches their attention. Word has spread. A new director is being brought in to take the company in a new direction. There's no immediate threat, but the uncertainty in the air is palpable. This news is unsettling, signaling that change is on the horizon, a change that the protagonist hasn't fully prepared for. The day the new director arrives, the office feels unusually quiet. The camera captures the entrance of the director dressed in a sharp, professional suit, walking with purpose through the hallway. There's a noticeable shift in the atmosphere as employees glance up from their work, their whispers barely audible. The director's presence is commanding, but cold. There's confidence in their stride, but a distance that creates a divide between them and the rest of the office. Their eyes are focused, scanning the room as they pass by, surveying the environment with a sharp, analytical gaze. It's clear this is a person who means business, someone who's here to make changes. The protagonist hears murmurs among the team. Conversations grow hushed, and the usual buzz of office chatter feels more like an undercurrent of nervous energy. Employees exchange uncertain looks, some whispering about the new direction the director intends to bring, others quietly speculating on how things will change. The protagonist, who has been accustomed to a certain routine, feels a twinge of unease as they see the new director from a distance, standing at the front of a meeting room and addressing the team. The camera lingers on the protagonist's face, a subtle tension visible as they listen from their desk. They can feel the change in the air, but they can't quite pinpoint what it will mean for them. As the director presents their vision in a brief meeting, the focus is on restructuring the company, streamlining operations, and maximizing efficiency. There's a clear message: things are going to change. The protagonist reflects on the changes being proposed. They had worked so hard to build relationships and systems that felt stable, but now those very systems are under scrutiny. Their mind begins to race, questioning how these changes will impact the team, the work culture, and most importantly, how their role will be affected. The new director is all about results, driving efficiency, and making decisions with speed. But the protagonist senses that the personal touch and relationships that have sustained the company may soon be sidelined. The protagonist takes a deep breath, the weight of this realization settling in. The uneasy feeling grows stronger. This is it, they think. Everything is about to change. The protagonist is in a meeting room, listening as the new director outlines a series of changes. The air feels thicker now, charged with an undercurrent of tension. The protagonist's gaze drifts around the room, catching the uncertain expressions on the faces of their colleagues. They notice the small things the directors knew. Cold approach to communication, the way they insist on micromanaging decisions. That used to be left to the team, and the subtle discomfort in the atmosphere. The camera zooms in on the protagonist's face, eyes narrowing in thought as they start to process the implications of these changes. The first major shift arrives when the director announces a complete overhaul of the sales structure. The protagonist's colleagues exchange confused glances. The new system is presented as a streamlined solution designed to maximize efficiency. But it's clear that the familiar systems and team-based approach are being replaced by a more top-down model. The protagonist's hands tighten around their pen as the realization sets in. This isn't just a tweak, but a fundamental shift in how the sales process will be run. The new approach feels detached from the relationships and strategies that had always made the team successful. Later that day, the protagonist walks through the office, observing the small changes that are beginning to unfold. The usual open-door policy is being replaced with more formal, impersonal communication. Emails are now long-winded directives instead of collaborative discussions. Staff members who once enjoyed autonomy in their roles now seem more anxious, unsure of how to approach decisions without clearance from the new director. The protagonist can feel the culture shifting from one of trust and teamwork to one of compliance and control. 8. The office, which once buzzed with collaboration, now feels stifling, tense. The protagonist can't help but question whether these changes are truly necessary. They reflect on how the team had functioned so well in the past, relying on trust, autonomy, and an understanding of each individual's strengths. The protagonist begins to wonder, are these changes truly improvements, or are they just the first signs of a direction that's fundamentally flawed? There's an unsettling feeling that the new director doesn't understand the company's heart, the relationships that have been cultivated over the years. I begin to suspect that these shifts might be the beginning of something worse, something that could undermine the very foundation of what they've worked so hard to build. The protagonist stands by the window, watching as the sun sets over the city. They feel a knot of unease tighten in their stomach, a sinking feeling that these small, seemingly insignificant changes are the first red flags in what could become a much larger issue. What's next, they wonder, and how will it affect me? Scene opens with the protagonist walking down a quiet hallway, the hum of the office around them now feeling muffled, almost distant. They're heading to a meeting with the new director, but there's an unsettling weight in the air. The protagonist doesn't yet know what's coming, but their instincts tell them something is wrong. Camera follows them as they open the door to the director's office, the sharp contrast of the director's pristine, minimalist space highlighting the growing divide between the two. The protagonist takes a seat, trying to remain composed, but the tension is palpable. The new director enters, a folder in hand, their expression as neutral as ever. They sit down across from the protagonist, not offering the usual warm greetings or casual conversation. Instead, the air between them is thick with formality, creating an almost immediate sense of unease. Without preamble, the director slides the folder across the desk, the words hanging in the air before they're even spoken. We've been reviewing the sales structure, and based on the new direction, we're making some changes, the director announces. The words hit like a cold wave, and the protagonist feels a rush of confusion, trying to process what's happening. Changes? What does that mean for me, I think? The director continues, their voice calm but firm. We're cutting your base by 40%, along with a major restructure of the commission model. These changes are necessary for the company's new growth strategy. The words echo in the protagonist's ears, but they barely register. The shock is overwhelming. 40%. They glance at the paper in front of them, the numbers swimming before their eyes. It's a blow they never saw coming, not in a million years. The trust they had in the company, the one they had worked so hard to build over 15 years, suddenly begins to crack. The camera captures the protagonist's face, eyes wide, jaw tightening, a mix of disbelief and growing anger. They don't speak immediately. The weight of the decision is sinking in, the shock paralyzing them for a moment. How could this be happening? Everything they had worked for, everything they'd built, now feels like it's being stripped away. The trust they had in the company feels shattered, and with it, the foundation of their career. The director waits for a response, but the protagonist can't find the words. They're blindsided, their thoughts racing. How did it come to this? The director continues to explain the changes, but the protagonist can't focus anymore. The numbers, the percentages, and the cold detachment of the director's voice all blur together. All they can feel is the sting of betrayal, how everything they thought was secure, everything they'd earned, has been taken away without warning or explanation. As the meeting ends, the protagonist stands, numb, walking out of the office without looking back. The weight of what just happened sinks in deeper, and the office, once a place of pride, now feels like a cage. They step out into the hallway, and the world seems to tilt, the uncertainty of what lies ahead overwhelming them. The scene opens. With the protagonist at their desk, the office now feeling much colder and more isolating. The fluorescent lights buzz softly in the background, but all the protagonist can focus on is the financial documents in front of them. They flip through the papers, their hands trembling slightly as they read the numbers over and over. The cuts to their base salary, the restructured commissions, it all seems unreal. Camera captures their eyes, scanning the figures, trying to process what the sudden financial hit will mean for their future. Each page feels like another blow. The protagonist's frustration is building with every passing moment. The office around them is still busy, people coming and going, but the protagonist is numb to it all. They sit back in their chair, staring blankly at the documents, their minds swirling with conflicting thoughts. The company they've poured their heart into for the past 15 years, the relationships they've built, the trust they thought was mutual, suddenly, it all feels like a distant memory. The protagonist runs a hand through their hair, exhaling sharply. How could they do this to me? They wonder, the sting of betrayal still fresh. Cut to a scene where the protagonist is sitting at home. The same papers laid out in front of them. The silence of the room feels suffocating now, the weight of the financial cut pressing down on them. They try to make sense of it, but it's difficult to focus. Numbers blur together, and the enormity of the situation is overwhelming. The protagonist's frustration is palpable, the toll of the cuts showing in the way their hand grips the edge of the table. How am I supposed to adjust to this? They think, feeling powerless and betrayed by the company that once felt like a second home. The camera zooms in on their face, capturing the exhaustion and frustration in their eyes. It's not just the financial hit, it's the emotional toll. The protagonist feels like the company has erased everything they've worked for, reducing their value to a set of numbers. They can't shake the feeling that they've been discarded, thrown aside without a second thought. The trust they had in the system, in the company, is broken, and the weight of that loss is starting to settle deep within them. The scene cuts to the protagonist, walking through the office the next day, a sense of heaviness following them. They try to mask their frustration, but it's clear from their expression that the emotional toll is taking its toll. Conversations with colleagues feel hollow, and the once familiar workspace now feels distant. The protagonist's mind is preoccupied, the anger simmering just beneath the surface, but they hold it in, not yet ready to confront the reality of the changes. The scene opens with the protagonist sitting at their desk at home. It's the room bathed in the soft glow of a desk lamp as night falls outside. They lean back in their chair, deep in thought, their mind racing with possibilities. On the table in front of them are notes, contracts, and client lists, every document representing years of hard work and relationships that they've built. The protagonist picks up a pen, tapping it against their fingers as they reflect on everything they've accomplished, everything they've been through. The weight of the recent changes still looms large, but there's a shift in their expression. A new fire begins to ignite within them. They grab a notebook and start writing down a plan, one that's far more ambitious than anything they've attempted before. With a steady hand, they outline a comeback strategy, reaching out to key clients, recalculating sales targets, and reinvigorating their personal network. The protagonist knows the ins and outs of the company better than anyone, and they realize that while the company might have taken away their base salary and restructured their commissions, they still hold the most valuable asset, the knowledge and relationships that built the company from the ground up. They are irreplaceable. The camera focuses on the protagonist's face, their eyes sharp with determination. They think about the clients they've cultivated over the years, loyal, clients who trust them, who rely on their expertise. The protagonist knows they can leverage those relationships. I built this company, they think, and I can rebuild my future on my terms. They pull out a client list and start making calls, reconnecting with people they've worked with for years. The calls are brief, but they're full of intent, planting seeds for future opportunities, reminding their contacts of the trust and value they've built together. Each call is a step toward regaining control, and with every conversation, the protagonist's confidence grows. The next part of the plan involves recalculating strategies. They've spent years working in the company's system, but now they need to find new ways to capitalize on the experience they have. The protagonist begins drafting new sales approaches, exploring potential partnerships, and thinking outside the box strategies that align with their own values and expertise. Not the new direction the company is pushing. The ambition to create something independent and on their own terms starts to build momentum. As they look over their notes, they start to feel a sense of empowerment, a renewed sense of purpose. The setbacks have only strengthened their resolve. They're ready to take action. The protagonist knows this won't be easy, but they feel more prepared than ever to fight back. They've been knocked down, but they aren't defeated. In fact, this is the moment they've been waiting for. The company may have thought they could replace them, but they've forgotten one critical detail. The protagonist is the heart of the business. And now, it's time to prove it. The protagonist walks down the familiar hallway of the office. Each step deliberate, the weight of the upcoming confrontation heavy in the air. The camera captures their determined strides. Fixed ahead, shoulders squared, they arrive at the new director's office, where the door looms slightly ajar. A subtle but powerful invitation to step into the battleground. The protagonist pauses for a moment, taking a deep breath before entering. Inside, the director is already seated behind their desk. The cold sterility of the office, reflecting the distance that has grown between them. The protagonist takes a seat across from the director. The tension in the room palpable. There's no pleasantries, no small talk, just the weight of what is about to unfold. The camera cuts between the two, capturing the palpable contrast in their expressions. The director's composed, almost detached, and the protagonist's intense, focused determination. The silence between them speaks volumes, but it's the protagonist who breaks it. Their voice calm, but filled with purpose. I've spent the last 15 years building this company, this team, helping it grow, develop, and succeed. The protagonist begins, their eyes steady on the director. I've built relationships that are worth more than any new strategy you put in place. I've been a leader, a mentor, and a trusted figure for clients and colleagues alike. And now, you've decided to erase that with a 40% cut to my base, and a restructure of commissions that completely disregards the value I bring to the table. The director listens, but says nothing, their gaze calculating, but the protagonist presses on. I know you have your vision for the future of the company, but the fact is, you don't understand it the way I do. Don't have the years of trust, the relationships that have been built from the ground up. And frankly, your new direction doesn't take into account the very core of what's made this company successful. The protagonist's words are measured but firm, each point highlighting their contributions over the years. They walk the director through the key moments the project saved. The clients won, the team that was built showing the depth of their involvement in every success. They stand up for themselves, not out of anger, but out of a quiet, unwavering confidence. The power dynamic in the room shifts with every word, and it's clear that the director, once in control, is now on the defensive. I've built this company with my own hands. The protagonist continues, leaning forward slightly, and I'm not going to let you erase that. You may think that the numbers on a sheet are all that matter, but those numbers don't tell the full story. I do. As the meeting progresses, the director begins to shift in their chair, the rigid composure cracking ever so slightly. The protagonist's words are powerful not because of their volume, but because they are backed by the undeniable truth of their experience, their years of hard work, and their contributions. The protagonist isn't just asking for their position back. They're reclaiming the power they never should have lost. By the end of the meeting, The director is visibly unsettled, the calm control that once defined them now slipping. The protagonist leaves the room with the quiet satisfaction of having stood up for themselves, for what they've earned, and for what they've built. The power has shifted in the room, and the director now knows that the protagonist can't be dismissed so easily. The tension in the air is thick as the protagonist and the new director sit across from each other, their conversation having reached its peak. The camera captures the emotional weight of the moment, the protagonist's face, now showing signs of exhaustion, but also of quiet determination. The director, having been confronted with the reality of the protagonist's value, shifts uneasily in their chair, clearly feeling the pressure of the discussion. Both are silent for a moment, the air between them heavy with the unspoken acknowledgement that things can't continue as they were. The protagonist takes a deep breath, their voice steady but firm. "I've given my all to this company. Can't just erase that with a decision made in a vacuum. I need you to understand that the changes you've implemented are not just numbers on a page for me, they're years of work, of relationships, and of trust that I've built with clients and colleagues alike." The director nods, subtle shift in their expression signaling that the message has been heard. There's a pause and the director finally speaks. "You're right," they admit, their voice betraying a hint of reluctance. "The restructure was done without fully considering the impact on those who have helped build this company. I can't undo everything, but I can restore part of what you've lost. I'm willing to reinstate some of your base salary and revise the commission structure to better reflect the work you've done here." The protagonist listens carefully, weighing the offer. The director's words sound sincere, but there's a part of the protagonist that feels conflicted. The offers are a step in the right direction, but they don't erase the betrayal. The way the protagonist was so easily dismissed. The protagonist stands in silence for a moment, looking the director in the eyes. The past few days have been a roller coaster, but the decision they make now will define their future. With a slow exhale, the protagonist speaks again, this time with quiet resolution. "I appreciate the offer, but it's clear that this company and I are no longer aligned. I've built everything I have here, but I'm not sure it's worth rebuilding on a foundation that can change so quickly." The director's face hardens slightly. But there's a recognition in their eyes, a recognition that the protagonist is no longer the same person who was blindsided a few weeks ago. The protagonist stands up, picking up their things. "Learned a lot over the years, but what I've learned most recently is that my value isn't defined by this company. I know what I'm capable of, and it's time for me to move on. The journey has been hard, but it's made me stronger, and now I'm ready for something new." The protagonist walks out of the office, a sense of closure filling them. The weight they had carried for so long, the frustration and uncertainty begins to lift. They leave behind the betrayal, the uncertainty, and the struggle. What lies ahead is unknown, but there's no fear in their step. They've reclaimed their power, their worth, their confidence. The protagonist stands at the window of their new office, or at a serene outdoor location, looking out over the city or the horizon. The sun is setting, casting a soft golden glow, symbolizing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. There's a quiet strength in their posture, a sense of peace that wasn't there before. The camera captures their face, no longer clouded with frustration or doubt, but filled with clarity and purpose. The protagonist takes a deep breath, letting the moment wash over them. Before they reflect on everything that has brought them here, the protagonist's mind drifts back to the journey, how they had once been blindsided by the company they had worked for, how the betrayal had shaken them to their core. But as the memories flood in, so does the realization of how far they've come. They think about the lessons learned, the strength gained, and the resilience that was born from the challenge. They realize that the hardships they faced weren't setbacks, but stepping stones that led them to a deeper understanding of who they are. "I've spent so much of my life building something for others," they think. "But now I'm building for myself." The protagonist isn't defined by the company anymore. They've built their own sense of self-worth, independent of anyone's approval. They've learned to trust their instincts, to stand up for themselves, and to never let anyone dictate their value again. The betrayal no longer holds the power it once did. Instead, it's become part of their story and experience that taught them to be stronger, more resourceful, more aware of their own worth. The protagonist reflects on the future, no longer bound by the fear of uncertainty. What's next? They think. The possibilities are endless. Whether it's starting a new venture, exploring new career opportunities, or focusing on personal growth and self-discovery, they are no longer afraid of what lies ahead. They've learned to embrace change, knowing that it's an inevitable part of life. Protagonist is now empowered, ready to face any challenge that comes their way with confidence and resilience. As the scene fades, the protagonist steps forward, taking that first step toward a future they control, no longer weighed down by the past, ready for whatever comes next, knowing that they'll never be caught off guard again.